Hi. In this session then we're going to look at Bitwig Studio. Now in the future we will be looking at doing more of these kind of sessions and going deeper into the actual DAW. But with these first few, so we've looked at Ableton, we've looked at Logic Pro, we're going to look at Cubase and a few others. But with these we're just looking at whether it's fit for purpose. So we've got a set criteria about whether it's fit for purpose. The first is pricing and upgrades. Bitwig Studio is relatively new, and it has a lot of the core developers that have merged over from Ableton. There's a few things that I really like about it, and there's a few things that I think are going to be improved in the future, and obviously it's going to get bigger and bigger. They've done a great job of kind of crossing over between a DAW like Ableton, where you'd probably only use it as your secondary DAW for most purposes, unless you're a sort of electronic music producer, which is going to be their main DAW. But this one's going to cross over, so you will find that you will look at this, if you're in mainstream as well, as a massive creative tool. One of the things I like about it is its cross-platform capabilities, and it includes Linux in that. So you've got Windows, a Mac, and Linux for the cross capabilities or cross-platform. You've also got a massive suite of plugins that are very, very visual. And this is something that Ableton kind of lacks in many respects. It's quite clunky to use in many respects. It's not really. Once you get used to it, it's fast and it's streamlined. But as a beginner, as someone that has to learn it, you're kind of like, whoa, what is all this? Whereas Bitwig's going to make that a lot more streamlined, and it's going to make it a lot more visual for new users. So the ease of use is not going to be as hardcore as Ableton is. One of the great things, as well as Ableton, it has this 30-day trial, which is actually it's an unlimited 30-day trial. So once you download it, you can use it for as long as you want. The only thing you can't do is save, but it has its full capacity, so you can experiment with the full capacity of what it can do, and you can enhance your skills and make these skills fantastic, without actually purchasing it. So you really get a sense of whether it will be for you. And the only thing you can't do is save. Now, like I said in the Ableton Live tutorial or presentation, the reason I like this particular approach to it is you don't have a dongle, you don't have this kind of limited cut down version in the trial. You get the full version, and the only thing you can't do is save. So from a practicing perspective, it's actually completely ideal, because the students can go away, they can go home, they can practice, and you know that they're not going to bring any of that work in with them into the classroom, into the controlled environment, unless they have the money to buy it, which most students don't even consider that. So, you can set them these practical tasks at home and get them to practice and get them trying things out. So let's have a look at it. So here's the Bitwig main screen. At the moment we're looking at this is summer 2018, and we're on version 2. So it's a relatively new DAW. But it is very powerful. It does share a lot of the back end development as Ableton does, and a lot of their Ableton core developers have kind of moved over to this, or the initial core developers of Ableton moved over and they started this Bitwig. I'm not sure how far that goes, but they do hint at sharing things like Ableton Link, which, for those that know, Ableton Link is a really, really cool way of linking external devices, whether that be an iPad, an iPhone, or whether that, and the apps that you can use on the iPad and iPhone, or whether it be like a hardware synth or something like the Roly or the Ableton Push. So the Ableton Link is a really great way of kind of linking environments together and creating these immersive environments in external ways, and Bitwig supports that, which is great. So you can download this, and there's a download link that allows you to do that. So if we go to the actual buying page, Bitwig is relatively new. It's only a few years old, and it's a lot cheaper than Ableton. So the initial pricing point is $299, where I think Ableton is something like $600. And this is for the full version. So Studio 2 is their full version. They have this 8-track version as well, which, I don't think you should really even entertain that. But they have this £200, and if you're in education, you scroll up a bit. If you're in education, you can get this for $199 or euros. So that does transfer as as much as, you know, that's £199 roughly. You get this 12 months free upgrade, which is great. So if you end up buying Ableton 2 mid-cycle, you will get Ableton 3. Sorry, if you end up buying Bitwig mid-cycle, you will end up getting Bitwig 3 as well, which is great. So the likelihood is pretty much like Cubase, you will have to upgrade every second year to kind of keep it stable and to keep it functional. Which, I don't know, I always find that a bit hard really to have to upgrade like that so often. And it, you know, it's one thing where certainly Logic Pro has got the massive advantage, whereas the upgrade cycles tend to be a lot longer, as well as Ableton's upgrade cycles tend to be a lot longer as well. So although it's cheaper, you do have to keep in mind that every kind of second year, so you can probably wait a whole year before upgrading, and then every second year, so 24 months, then you'll have to do the upgrade. So you have to keep this in the budget, which when we're using Logic Pro, we don't really have to think about that so often, which is great. So if you have to put, say, £2,000 aside for your 20 units or £4,000 aside for your 20 units every second year, that's a hefty amount of your budget. I mean, when we moved over to Logic and we was using it for 2 years, I managed to save that upgrade cycle and I bought a vocal booth with it. So I spent that £4 grand and got myself a vocal booth, replenished all of my leads. So just looking at that, you know, you do save yourself money, and upgrades are one of the biggest things. So it does come fully packed with everything you could possibly need. So let's just go over and have a little look at Bitwig Studio and see what we have here. So if we click on the Bitwig Studio button, close this because I had it open already, and you'll notice straight away that it's very, very visual. It's laid out much the same way that Ableton is, but one thing I really like is the channel strip is on the left hand side, or the channels are on the left hand side, rather than in Ableton when you switch over to the arrangement view and they're on the right hand side. And for some users, like if you use Cubase and you use Logic or a standard DAW, you just want to see your channels on the left hand side. It's kind of very commonplace. Another thing that I like is in this center panel here, you have your clip view, and you can minimize your clip view, whereas in Ableton you'd have to switch between session view and arrange view to kind of get this, whereas in Bitwig they allow you to have your clip view or your session view and your arrange view together, so you can quickly drag and drop, or you can quickly make your arrangements. Now the bottom area works pretty much the same way as Ableton, where you have this long scrollable area where you can set up your devices, you can set up your instruments, you can set up your effects and effects racks and your MIDI instruments. And the signal flow works almost identical. And you can switch this out for a mixer view as well, which is great. And I'll show you that in a second. There's another image down below. The audio capacity on Bitwig is also very, very good. They allow you to do a lot of editing in the editing windows, probably more than Ableton does even. And it's same with the MIDI views as well. The MIDI views are fantastic, and there's the editing capacity is probably a lot higher. I would feel more confident about recording multiple tracks of audio in Bitwig than I probably would in Ableton. Although Ableton is very capable of that, it's the after editing process that always concerns me a little bit. And especially if you've got students that kind of maybe not so capable and they bottle out their mixes, and they need kind of just to have a little bit more support with that. And Bitwig seems to have that in place. And it's kind of this crossover between your traditional DAW to your kind of your new emerging digital musician technology. And you know, it's okay. And I like how visual it is. And like I said earlier about the Ableton Link hardware, you can do this as well. Automation is massive. Once again, you've got your channel strips on the left hand side when you select them, which makes a lot of sense. You have a massive amount of browser power, which is great. The sound capacity is much like Ableton. It doesn't have as many resources as Ableton, but it's getting there, you know, and over time it will have loads. It does have support for VST Instruments, so if you're using Cubase and you've bought all of your Native Instruments plugins or your Waves plugins, they will work with Bitwig. And it's the same with Ableton as well. They all work and you can install them, and it's great. So I think that's pretty much everything covered. So I would say that this particular software, let's just move back to the main screen. So I would say that this particular software is going to be great for crossover students. It's going to be great for creativity. It's maybe not quite there in terms of Cubase and Logic with the audio editing side of things, but it's a massive step forward. It's definitely going to be a fantastic secondary DAW, and it may even act as your primary DAW, but you might want to kind of do testing on their demo version before you commit to that value. So lots of scope. You should definitely have a little play with it. I think that's pretty much all I need to say. It does come built in with a synthesizer, a full-blown synthesizers, full-blown samplers, and there was, I missed that actually, but there was a nice little demo I saw earlier where you could see all of the kind of visualizations. Where are they? Bitwig Studio's out. It was one of these pages. It might have even been on this summer page, where you can actually see all of their visualizations, and they are brilliant. So if you want to demonstrate to students how an ADSR works, you actually get a visualize. It's very visual. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, that's me signing off. So in the next one, then we're going to look at Cubase and kind of some of the thought process behind why you would use that in music technology.